section in chapter 4, which means
Yes.
okay, so next week we're actually going to spend another day on Monday in section 4-7, so just a practice day on Monday. Tuesday I will have your review for you, and then we are actually going to spend 2 days on this test, okay? Kind of a lot in chapter 4. There's a lot of proofs, and what was suggested to me was to split up into 2 days and do just the proofs on one day. So you'll do just the proof part of the test on Wednesday, and then everything else in chapter 4 that's not proofs, you'll do that on Thursday. Okay? So other than test, pretty, I guess, simple, we'll call it simple week next week. So, okay, today, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about congruence and overlapping triangles. In a way, what we do today is kind of not anything different than we've already done. It is going to be a lot of proofs. But it's like one extra step, and then it's kind of just practicing and combining everything we've talked about this chapter so far. So the triangles you're going to look at today, instead of already being separate triangles, or even if they are separate triangles, maybe they have a shared side or a shared angle, these are going to be overlapping triangles. So they've got some shared parts. So really the only thing that's new today is whenever you have these overlapping triangles, some tips for doing proofs with overlapping triangles: don't leave them as overlapping triangles. We're going to copy them down and separate them so they're not overlapping triangles anymore. Then what we can do is we can identify those shared parts. So maybe they have an angle that they both have, or they have a side that they both have. Those would be congruent. If they both have the same angle, they'd be congruent. If they have the same side, they'd be congruent. And then, of course, this is not a new tip, but have a game plan. Before you start, have it in mind what we're going to do. So what I want to do first is just kind of practice looking at these overlapping triangles and separating them out. So I like to use 2 different colors. I'm a visual person, so if you want to have maybe 2 different colored pens, pencils don't have to. But what I like to do is I like to actually trace the 2 triangles in different colors. So we can see that maybe I called this one of my triangles. And what I could do is whenever I see just that green triangle, I could copy that down separate from the overlapping triangles. Now whenever you do this, you want to go ahead and make sure you label it. So H, K, L. The other triangle would be this one right here. It's kind of laying on its side. So if I copied that one down, this would be triangle J, K, M. So that's one thing we want to do. Separate it out, copy down our 2 triangles. But what's going to be really helpful today is we know that to prove triangles are congruent, we need congruent sides, or we need congruent angles. And they're going to give you some of that. But what I can see from the picture, you see how they both have this angle K right here? And it's the same angle in both of them. This angle K is the same angle K in both triangles. So I know just from the diagram that that angle's congruent. Okay, now you have to be really careful with these, okay, and make sure it is the exact same angle in both triangles, and it is. So you kind of have to look at it in the 2 separate diagrams and then go back to the original one. So like this one here, so I have a lot of triangles here. But the 2 triangles I'm going to pick out is going to be this one here. So let's look at triangle QRS. Okay, so that one right there, QRS. And then this triangle is TRS. So if I copy this one down, now this is where you need to be really careful, because both of these triangles have an angle R. But if you look at the angle R, go back to the original picture, if you look at the angle R, see how it's not the same angle in the purple triangle? It's this big angle in the purple triangle. And then in the red triangle, it's smaller. It's not the same angle. Although both angles are, it's not the same angle R. Okay? And if you look at angle S, it's the same thing, right? In the red triangle, it's a big angle, but in the purple triangle, it's not the same angle. Okay? And then this has an angle Q, this has an angle T. They have no shared angles. What they do have See how they both have that shared side? They both have this side RS. And since they both have that side, we know that it'd be congruent. So that's one thing that we're going to be working on today, is picking out those congruent sides. So what we're going to be doing today are proofs that are going to look kind of like this. So before we actually set up our proof, let's do what we just did. Let's take this diagram with these two triangles. Let's separate them out into the two separate triangles. So this first triangle that's over here on the left, we would call triangle, we could call triangle Z, W, X. And then this triangle on the right, we could call triangle Y, X, W. W. Now when you go to mark your diagram, we do have everything in the given. They tell me that angle ZXW is congruent to angle YWX. And it says angle ZWX is congruent to angle YXW. Now, if you kind of look at the proof, kind of come up with our game plan, what I'm trying to prove is I'm trying to prove that ZW is congruent to YX. So I'm trying to prove these two sides are congruent. So it's not technically asking me to prove that the triangles are congruent, but I'm going to have to prove that triangles are congruent to prove that their corresponding sides are congruent. So I need to use one of the 5 ways to prove triangles are congruent. So side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, or the new one from yesterday, hypotenuse, leg. One of those 5. So far, I have 2 angles. So I know I'm going to need some other information. So if you go back to the original picture, what I need to look for is see, do I have any shared angles or do I have any shared sides? It's kind of like the last we looked at. That yes, they both have an angle W, but it's not the same angle W in both pictures. It's not the same angle X in both pictures. One has a Z, one has a Y. So there are no shared angles. They do have a shared side. See that? How they both have that WX? So if you look at what I have marked, I have an angle, side, angle. So that's what we're going to do to prove these triangles are congruent. So let's set up our proofs or statements and our reasons. Okay, my first statement, angle ZXW congruent to angle YWX. Angle ZWX congruent to angle YXW. Because it's my given. In my proof, I'm going to use angle, side, angle. In my proof, I need to say angle congruent to angle, side congruent to side, angle congruent to angle. But the angles are already done for me. They already did the angles for me. So I'm just going to say the side. So what is my set of congruent sides? What side is congruent? WX congruent to WX. WX congruent to WX. How do you know WX is congruent to WX? That's the reflexive property of congruence. So I have my angle, my side, and my angle. So we're ready to say that triangle ZWX is congruent to triangle YXW because of angle, side, angle. And remember, the end goal here is to prove that ZW is congruent to YX. And we know that if the triangles are congruent, their corresponding sides are congruent. So we can say ZW is congruent to YX because CP That's what we're doing today. Okay, so other than separating it out, it's kind of just more practice with proofs. Okay, let's get this glued into, should be page 61, and we can just call this overlapping triangles. So, some of what you're doing today is not with proofs, it's just practicing with these overlapping triangles. So, in your book, it's going to read just these same directions. It's going to say, okay, you have a diagram that's got a red triangle and a blue triangle. So we're going to look at the red and blue triangle, and we're going to decide what is the common side or the common angle. So the one that they both share. So number one, our first triangle will look like this. It's going to be an overlapping triangle. So we're going to have another triangle that looks like this. Now they tell me they are congruent. We need a lot of letters here, so we'll start at the top. Left and just do A, B, C, D, E. So I really think that having those colors helps. So what we're looking for is if they have any common angles or if they have any common sides. So what you kind of have to do is look at each triangle individually. So if you look at just the red triangle, if they had a common side, you would see a blue line just right over top of the entire red line. And it does share part of it, but not all of it. There are no common sides. If you look at the common angles, not angle A, not angle E, not angle B, not angle D, but you see how angle C? See how it's the exact same angle for both triangles? That's the shared angle, that's the common angle that they have. That's what we're looking for now. Now the next one you're going to do almost the same thing, except we're going to actually separate it out and then identify any common sides or angles. So this set of triangles will look something like this. And we'll start at the bottom left and do W, X, Y, Z. Okay, now here's the thing. There's a lot of triangles here. You can name a ton of triangles here. So they're also going to tell you, here's the triangles that I want you to redraw. So we want to redraw triangle W, X, Z. And triangle X, W, Y. So this is where I think the colors kind of really helps you. You can really identify the correct triangles. So W, X, Z. So go from W to X to Z. That would be that triangle there. So if we redraw that, and then make sure we label it W, X, Z. And then we want to do triangle X, W, Y, which would be that triangle there. So we draw that. X, W, Y. But now what we want to do is we want to identify any common angles or sides. Now if you look at the angles, this is one of those ones where they both have an angle X, but you can clearly see whenever I redraw them, that's not the same angle, right? That's not shared, okay? W, not common either, okay? So we're looking at the sides. So they have these sides that they both have. That XW right there, and they both have that side right there. So the answer you're looking for would be side XW. You can see it in the original picture, because that's the only part that I had colored. The entire thing in both blue and orange. So you'll have a handful of those in your homework, and then you have 4 proofs in your homework tonight. So let's look at a couple of proofs that you'll have tonight. So number 3, my given says RT is congruent to US, and then angle URS and angle TSR are right angles. We want to prove angle T is congruent to angle U. Okay, and this diagram is going to look kind of pretty similar to the last one, just on its side. So we'll look something like that. And to label it, we'll do top left will be R, S, T, U. So what we want to do first is I don't want these as overlapping triangles. I want to separate these out into the 2 separate triangles. So if we look at what we're trying to prove that angle T is congruent to angle U. So that can sometimes give you a little bit of an idea of what 2 triangles you're looking at. Because there's a couple different pairs of triangles here, but if I'm looking for angle T and angle U, I'm going to be looking at this triangle here and this triangle here. They both have an angle T and an angle U. So if I redraw those, you have U, R, S, and then we would have S, T, R. And then we want to not only mark our diagram with everything in the given, but also if I have a shared side or a shared angle. So we know that RT is congruent to US. I know that URS and TSR are right angles. But in order to prove this, I either need a side, angle, or angle, side, or hypotenuse leg. So right now I have a right angle, which could be considered an angle, and a side. What else can I take from the overlapping diagram? What else do they have in common? Yeah, that top shared side. So if you look at what I have here, I have 2 right triangles and a couple of sides. So we did yesterday. What could I use to prove these triangles are congruent? ASS. We cannot use ASS. Now it wouldn't be side, angle, side, because the angle's not the right spot. Homie? We did yesterday. Hypotenuse, leg. It's a right triangle. Okay? So we're going to use hypotenuse leg to prove these are congruent. So we've got our statements, our reasons. We'll start with RT, congruent to US, angle URS, and angle TSR are right angles because of the given. Now remember from yesterday, if you're going to use hypotenuse leg, you have to have a right triangle and you have to say these are right triangles, and I haven't said that yet. In order to say these are right triangles, you have to have right angles. We had to say that almost every time yesterday, but they told me. They already told me that those are right angles. So I don't have to say that again. I'm ready to go ahead and say that these 2 triangles are right triangles. So we'll say triangle URS and triangle TSR are right triangles. And that's just the definition of right triangles. And if I'm going to use hypotenuse leg, I need to say their hypotenuse are congruent. Have I said that? I have, right? US congruent. Yeah, they said that in the given. I need to say their legs are congruent. Have I said that? No. So the leg is that top side right there. The leg is the one that says RS is congruent to RS. How do I know that's true? Reflexive property of congruence. So I have my right triangle, I've got the hypotenuse, I've got the leg. So I can say triangle URS is congruent to triangle TSR because hypotenuse A. But that's not what I'm trying to prove. I'm trying to prove that angle T is congruent to angle U. But I know if these triangles are congruent, all of their corresponding parts are congruent. So angle T is congruent to angle U. Why? BCT. Questions on number 3. Okay, let's do one more. Now, not all of the proofs today are going to be hypotenuse-like, so you may have to use some of the other ones from before. So this time, let's say we have our given AR is congruent to LR, PR is congruent to IR, and we are wanting to prove AS is congruent to LS. Okay, here's what my diagram looks like. It's going to look like an isosceles triangle. And we're going to have intersecting segments in the middle. And then we need lots of letters here. So we'll start at the bottom left and we'll do A, P, R, and down the other side will be I, L, and then that middle intersection will be S. Now I think with this one, the first thing, probably the hardest thing, is you just have to figure out which triangles do I need, because there's a lot of triangles here. So what you might do is you might pick out some of the sides and see if you can maybe see what information you're given, what we're trying to find, what we're trying to prove, so we can kind of narrow down what triangles I'm looking for. So we have AR, okay, congruent to LR. So if I were to mark those, AR congruent to LR, okay. We have PR congruent to IR. Okay, so PR congruent to, PR congruent to IR. I'm wanting to prove that AS is congruent to LS. So I think sometimes tracing those sides can help you see what triangles, you see what two triangles we're looking for, those top ones there. So let's go ahead and let's copy these two triangles down. So we have P, R, L, and then the other one is going to be A, R, I. And my given says AR. AR is congruent to LR. And then PR is congruent to IR. So I have two sides. So go back to the picture. So looking at these two triangles, what do they have in common? What do they share? Yeah, that top one right there. See how they both have that angle R? So we know that those are congruent as well. So look at your markings. What am I going to use to prove these triangles are congruent? Side, angle, side. Very good. Okay, so in our proof, we've got our statements, our reasons. Okay, so we know AR is congruent to LR, PR congruent to IR because of the given. Now we said we're going to want to do side, angle, side. I already did the two sides, that was in my given, but I need the angle. What is the corresponding angle here? What's my congruent set of angles? Remember an A. What angle did I mark that's congruent? R. Yeah, it's just angle R. Angle R is congruent to angle R because reflects the property of congruence. So I have my side, angle, side. So I'm ready to say triangle ARI is congruent to LRP by side, angle, side. And if the triangles are congruent, I know AS is congruent to LS because CECT.